Today we are delving into one of the most perplexing and enduring mysteries in American crime history, the Zodiac Killer. This notorious serial killer, who terrorized Northern California in the late 1960s and early 1970s, left behind a trail of cryptic messages and a legacy of fear. Despite extensive investigations and numerous suspects, the true identity of the Zodiac Killer remains unknown. In this episode, we'll explore the three main suspects who have been linked to the Zodiac Killer case over the years, each offering a unique perspective on this chilling enigma. Our first suspect is Arthur Leigh Allen, a name that has become almost synonymous with the Zodiac Killer investigation. Born on December 18, 1933, in Vallejo, California, Allen was a convicted child molester with a history of violent behavior. His name surfaced as a suspect in the early 1970s due to several factors. Allen was known to have lived in the vicinity of the Zodiac Killer's known crime scenes. For instance, he resided in Vallejo, California, where the Zodiac's first known murder took place in 1968. This geographical connection made Allen an immediate person of interest. Allen's criminal history also raised red flags. He had a history of violent behavior and was convicted of child molestation, which aligned with the Zodiac Killer's profile of targeting vulnerable victims. His violent tendencies and criminal background seemed to fit the behavioral patterns of the Zodiac Killer. Furthermore, Allen was reported to have a fascination with weapons and violent crime, which was consistent with the Zodiac's modus operandi. Another intriguing detail about Allen was his supposed obsession with the Zodiac Killer's cryptic messages. Allen reportedly discussed the Zodiac's ciphers and letters with acquaintances, suggesting a possible connection or at least a deep interest in the case. This obsession was noted by those who interacted with him, contributing to the suspicion surrounding him. Additionally, Allen had a history of escaping from situations that could have led to his capture, mirroring the Zodiac Killer's ability to elude law enforcement. Despite these connections, the investigation into Allen's involvement was hampered by a lack of concrete evidence. Although he was a person of interest, no definitive proof linked him directly to the Zodiac's crimes. The police investigation into Allen included surveillance and interviews, but these efforts did not yield conclusive results. Allen died in 1992, and despite numerous attempts to link him to the Zodiac Killer, he remains a controversial figure in the case. The second main suspect is Richard Gajkowski, a journalist and known radical with a background that drew the attention of investigators. Born on February 15, 1936, in Spokane, Washington, Gajkowski's name emerged as a suspect due to several factors. Gajkowski was a journalist who worked in the San Francisco Bay Area during the Zodiac Killer's active years. His profession put him in close proximity to the media frenzy surrounding the Zodiac Killer, and his background as a radical political activist made him a person of interest. One of the key aspects linking Gajkowski to the Zodiac Killer case was his alleged knowledge of the Zodiac ciphers. Some investigators and amateur sleuths believed that Gajkowski had a familiarity with the Zodiac's cryptic messages and symbols, which suggested he might have been involved in crafting the letters sent to newspapers. Additionally, Gajkowski's radical political views and involvement in various controversial causes added a layer of intrigue to his potential connection to the Zodiac Killer's motivations. Gajkowski's background and behavior were scrutinized during the investigation. He was known to have discussed the Zodiac case with others, and some witnesses reported that he had a peculiar interest in the case. However, despite these suspicions, there was no direct evidence linking Gajkowski to the Zodiac Killer's crimes. Investigators examined his background and interviewed people connected to him, but the lack of physical evidence or corroborating witness statements prevented a definitive conclusion. Gajkowski passed away in 2004, and while some continue to believe in his potential involvement, the evidence remains circumstantial. Our third significant suspect is Lawrence Kane, who was identified as a potential Zodiac Killer by several investigators and amateur sleuths. Born on February 22, 1934, in the San Francisco Bay Area, Kane had a criminal record that included convictions for violent offenses. His name emerged as a suspect due to his connections to the locations of some of the Zodiac's known crimes and his apparent similarities to the descriptions given by witnesses. Kane's background as a convicted sex offender with a history of violent behavior drew parallels to the Zodiac Killer's profile. He had been arrested for violent offenses, and his criminal history included incidents that mirrored the Zodiac's modus operandi. Kane's name surfaced in relation to the Zodiac case due to witness statements and police reports linking him to the area where some of the Zodiac's crimes occurred. For example, Kane lived in close proximity to the scenes of some of the Zodiac's murders, raising suspicion among investigators. One notable aspect of Kane's involvement was his alleged connections to the San Francisco Bay Area, where the Zodiac Killer was active. Witnesses reported seeing a man resembling Kane in the vicinity of the crime scenes. Additionally, Kane's criminal background and his behavior were scrutinized during the investigation, leading some to believe that he might have been involved in the Zodiac's crimes. However, despite these connections, there was no conclusive evidence linking Kane directly to the Zodiac Killer. The investigation into Kane's potential involvement was extensive, with law enforcement examining his background and interviewing people who knew him. Despite these efforts, the lack of definitive evidence prevented a conclusive identification of Kane as the Zodiac Killer. Kane passed away in 2004, and while some theories continue to suggest his involvement, the Zodiac Killer's true identity remains unresolved. In examining these three suspects, Arthur Leigh Allen, Richard Gaikowski, and Lawrence Kane, it's clear that each had connections and characteristics that made them persons of interest in the Zodiac Killer case. The complexities of the case and the elusive nature of the Zodiac Killer have contributed to the ongoing intrigue and investigation into potential suspects. Despite the extensive efforts to link these individuals to the Zodiac Killer's crimes, no definitive proof has been found to conclusively identify any of them as the killer. The Zodiac Killer's crimes remain some of the most notorious and enigmatic in American criminal history. The investigation into the Zodiac's identity has spanned decades, involving numerous suspects and theories, but the killer's true identity remains shrouded in mystery. The ongoing search for answers reflects the challenges faced in solving high-profile criminal cases and the enduring fascination with unsolved mysteries. Do you think we will ever solve the Zodiac Killer's crimes? Who out of the three suspects do you believe is most likely? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Forgotten Crimes. We love diving into the world of true crime, exploring the stories that grip the world and uncovering the details that make these cases so fascinating. If there's a case you're curious about or if you have any thoughts to share, let us know. Until next time, keep your curiosity alive and remember, the world of crime is as complex as it is captivating.